It is Tuesday, January 20th. Happy New Year. Hope everyone is staying warm and safe on the roads. We'll get started with item number 1. Director Austin, if you'd be so kind to take roll.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Coutier.
Here.
Vogel. Here. Harrison. Here. Knapp.
Here.
Korth. Absent. Frost. Here. Teran. Absent. Coe.
Here.
And Shack is absent.
Moving on to item number 2, approval of agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion to approve the agenda was made by Harrison. It was supported by Coe. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Item number 3, approval of minutes of the December 15th, 2025 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
A motion to approve the minutes of the December 15th, 2025 regular meeting was made by Vogel. It was supported by Frost. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Moving on to item number 4, is there any public comment? Closing public comment and moving on to item number 5, unfinished business. There is none. Item number 6A, new business, proposed meeting dates for the fiscal year 2026-2027 from Director Austin.
All right. Good morning, Chairman Knapp, and good morning to the rest of the DDA board. Thank you guys for making it. I know it was daunting the past couple of days, so appreciate you guys coming out. Looking at the proposed dates, this is something we do every January for the new fiscal year. FY 26-27 is what we're heading into on April 1st. We have dates scheduled up until that point. January, what you'll see is actually in the first list, the 2026 dates, pretty typical, aligned with our third Monday of the month. And then a couple of asterisks there to note our required semi-annual informational meetings right there. And then 27, actually, looking at that schedule, we'll have a similar thing that we have this month and next month, which is a holiday shift, President's Day, and then also Martin Luther King Day, which is yesterday. So I don't have any other comments for that. If there's anything I didn't notice that people notice in that schedule or anything they'd like to bring up, then please do. Otherwise, I'd requested a motion to approve.
Only notice that I will occasionally have a conflict because that's the same date. Now that we've got a third Monday, it's the same date that Grand Rapids Chamber holds their breakfast with legislators. So occasionally I'll be absent because it takes priority.
Okay. Brian, would you mind just pulling your microphone down just a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
I move approval of the meeting dates for 2026. And 27 is listed.
Second.
Motion to approve the proposed DDA board meeting dates for the fiscal year of 2026-2027 was made by Harrison. It was supported by Coe. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Moving on to item number 6B, tree maintenance request.
Okay, thank you guys. So if you guys remember, not last meeting, but the meeting before that, I did a little bit of a presentation on the results of the Bartlett tree risk assessment that you guys approved last year in the spring. That resulted in 293 trees inside of our right-of-way to be assessed at a level 2 level. So that's like an arborist standard for the United States for assessing tree maintenance and health and everything. So if you remember, at the end of that, there were several trees that at that level, they could see that there was possibly an issue, but they couldn't give the best recommendation without getting up into the tree or using some advanced technology. But there were several items that they could note, including pruning, about 7 trees for removal. And they also documented the risk of those trees with their standard that they annotated in that plan, as well as any targets that could be hit or struck by the tree, whether that's sidewalk, parking, building, anything like that. So we kind of went through that 2 meetings ago, so I'm not going to rehash that as much. But I did reach out to some tree maintenance companies. If you guys remember, the winter is actually the time they prefer to conduct tree maintenance, partially because of what happens inside the tree with sap and things like that. But it's also different species have different recommendations. So we're in a good window for oaks. We are not in a good window for sugar maples and things like that. So I actually, you'll see I had a previous, or part of the cost assessment does have some sugar maple stuff on there, but consequently, if we did the level 3 assessment currently, we'd have to hold off on maintenance. And given that we have money budgeted for this fiscal year that ends in April, I figured we would handle the ones that we can address as soon as possible. So I apologize. There's going to be a couple of revisions that I have for you guys here, and I will annotate them. I reached out to 4 different companies, and I got timely responses from 2, so that's Bartlett and also Wittenbach. So I'll just kind of roll through it. The scope of services that I am requesting are level 3 advanced assessments, tree pruning and professional maintenance, and also a couple of removals. Like I said, Bartlett and Wittenbach responded, but note that level 3 assessments, only some companies can do that based off of that specialization. So after receiving the proposals, I also identified an additional tree 213, which you can see in the box on the top right. That tree is actually just down the road here in front of Mr. Chakai's house. That one is one of the only ones that has a maintenance recommendation and a level 3 recommendation and has a building as a target, which is his house. So that was something that the other ones are street and sidewalk and things like that. That one I just wanted to make sure that we did get that on there, and I do have a revised number for that to include that on there. So recommended scope of work, level 3 advanced assessments for tree 244, 213, and 226. And if you guys need clarification on where those are, I can draw your attention to it. But 244 is kind of right at one of our major pedestrian junctures, or one of our larger junctures, which is kind of right across from Foxtail, where there is a marked crosswalk that people use quite often. You can actually tell by looking at that one, it's had better days. And then 213 is that one I talked about at Mr. Chakai's house, and 226 is actually one of our bur oaks behind us here, right before Artisan Fox. So there's one in front of Artisan Fox on Bronson, and there's one just before that. Tree pruning and maintenance. It's now going to be 223 through 227. And tree removal is for 243 and 278. So 243 is actually just out the Township Hall onto Thornapple and to the right. There's one leaning pretty significantly right there. We'll be removing that one that's proposed. And 278 is a a black oak that is actually down on near Bronson and Teeple. And the Google Street View on these are actually really effective because they're taken in July, and so you can see, if you do the street view on some of them, you can see that there is no growth on quite a few of them, and it's right next to the power line, and it's in a really bad shape. And it's the only one that was actually on the removal that had an ASAP work phase on it, so we included that one too. So to revise the numbers just a little bit for you, so we make sure we have an accurate thing, I did put a packet there in front of you from Bartlett, and I highlighted the portions. So there were several. They did a estimate on several scopes of work, so including level 3. So I highlighted the numbers that I would be requesting from them. I apologize. I'm trying to capitalize on the winter time. I would have them revise the quote so you guys had a full quote of just the work that they were going to do. But this was kind of a la carte coming from 2 different companies with better prices. So the Wittenbach one is accurate. I've highlighted 2 of them. They do a much better job, or a much more cost-effective job for removals. That's something that they admitted to. Bartlett, in terms of having a much more thorough knowledge on tree type, what's needed for those trees, they're probably the best in the region. Consequently, that is also why I'm recommending that we do spend a little bit more money on our bur oaks back here. So I think you guys probably have some opinions on them, and I know there's a lot of people in the community that have opinions on the trees in our right-of-way along Bronson and kind of the character and the value that they add. The tree risk assessment actually shows a value for those trees, and it's pretty significant. You have $50,000, $60,000. But I took just for, to kind of validate why I'm asking Bartlett to do it as opposed to Wittenbach. Some of the companies do see tree, chop tree kind of stuff, and they do, more than that. But Bartlett really understands them. understands kind of what kind of maintenance could cause a further issue if you go a little too far. The tree right back here has a 56-inch diameter at breast height. So if you guys remember the last meeting, that's how the diameter across the tree at breast height, so at like chest level. And if you put that into a couple of different calculators, USDA and the arborist, that one specifically could be 250 to over 300 years old, which is kind of crazy because it is planted in an appropriate right-of-way, or either right-of-way was established around it. I'll talk to Kristen about that. But all of those bur oaks together could average between 200 and over 300 years old, so the average in there. But the 56-inch diameter one could be the oldest there. I'd love to see what the one at the end of the covered bridge is. That one is even bigger, I believe. That's Kristen's favorite tree. End of the covered bridge, that big oak right there. So they said basically, it described if it's in harder environments to grow, like a right-of-way with salt, utility work, all this other stuff that happens, it will grow slower. So a larger tree consequently is, kind of a little bit older because of the hard conditions it had to grow in versus something out in the middle of a field. So I think we should really value those trees in terms of the character that they provide, but notice the risk that they do pose with some of the branches over top of parking and along a tree or a corridor that has a lot of character and a lot of people like to traverse. So to revise the numbers here a little bit, the Bartlett Tree Experts, if you're looking at the cost summary on page 3, Bartlett Tree Experts Level 3 Advanced Assessment, including pruning and maintenance, adding tree 223, which is the last bur oak just across the stretch of the Township Hall property there. So total cost for that is $11,180 for if you're looking at the revised assessment that I got you, plus the stuff that is still valid on the one in the packet. And the Wittenbach services, tree services, is still $6,000. So the total revised cost is $17,180. I did put the alignment with the DDA goals and objectives there. Objective 4, public maintenance, public investment maintenance, beautification, placemaking. If you notice, we did only budget $10,000 for tree maintenance this year. That is before we completed the tree risk assessment. I think there's some work to be done. I will talk about that budget allocation when we talk about budget to increase there to make sure that we can a little bit more aggressively address some of the risks that we have in the DDA. We do have an unfunded maintenance balance that I talked about, unassigned fund maintenance balance in excess of $500,000 right now, which can be utilized to address some of these overruns. I do recommend addressing this or utilizing that to address the overrun so that we can make some good headway here and address people that might have a kind of an outsized risk based off of where they're at. So if you guys have any questions for me, I did note, I apologize once again. I would have liked to condense this into the completely accurate estimates so that you guys could see exactly what the cost was per sheet. But like I said, this was kind of a la carte from a couple different services. So.
Couple thoughts. First, great presentation and preparation. Thank you. I doubt you were a tree expert when you signed up for this job, but it's kind of a cool part of what we do is we get to learn and do new things. I think it's important work to our safety, but also community character that we preserve these trees. I appreciate that we're using a vendor that takes a careful and cautious approach in Bartlett. Are we doing, my two questions, is there any communication to adjacent property owners, even though they're in the right of way and we have the right to, maintain these trees? I think it's also their property. We have a right of way on their property. And so what are we doing to adjacent property owners? And then you noted we have a $10,000 budget, but we're asking for $15,000. Do we need to amend the budget before we spend from a principal standpoint, or how are we going to address the excess of?
Yeah. So to answer your first question, a lot of those parcels actually end at the right of way. They might be not meets and bounds parcels. So meets and bounds parcels extend all the way to the center line of the street. And so they're, one of the benefits of the Citizens Council that we've had, which are our residents that are down here, and like I said, Zach Schaff is going to be our resident member replacing Margaret, is that they were very keen on this work and very keen on, very excited to hear that we were conducting this, especially Chris Chakai, who is right down the way with 213 in front of him. So similar with this work, and also with with sidewalk work, I would be notifying them in advance so they can understand where the noise in the trucks are coming from prior to that. So, and then secondly, I do not believe we need to amend the budget currently before doing this. This is something where we establish that budget. If we have the funds able, if there's unforeseen things that come up, we can, as long as we have a healthy fund balance to assign it to, especially an unassigned fund balance, then we can cover that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julius, but.
Correct. We'll do fourth quarter budget amendments to clean up anything that's approved by the board.
Okay, thanks.
So Kevin, for these Maple assessments, we'd just be looking at those in the summer?
Correct.
for the new budget
Yes,
season?
thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, there's 34, 35, 36, and 37 are trees just down the way. They have some pruning and maintenance that are recommended, but sugar maples actually cannot be, because of what happens to the sap if you open up a wound and what bugs are attracted, and the bugs actually carry the fungi and could kill the tree, then you have to do that maintenance at a different time frame. So it kind of be a little bit wasted in terms of, getting that level 3 assessment would be effective, but then having to hold off on the work versus something that we can do now with oaks, which is, we're in the, kind of the oak time frame until April, really, for them to do it. So, yeah, so Bartlett has been great. I've talked to them about the trees in the right of way on Ada. They are on Ada Drive and a couple of different spots. They're very, very informative. And like you said, they do share a lot of information on trees and things that you wouldn't even expect. So, but I would seek to address those at the basically with the next budgetary cycle, so we could get those assessed. Yeah.
I'll make the motion to approve the tree maintenance from Bartlett Tree Experts and Wittenbach Tree Services as presented for a total cost of $15,886 plus the difference for the other tree, and to allow the DDA director to coordinate the services.
I'll second.
Sorry, did the wording on that allow me to do the 17,000? I just wanted to.
I said plus the extra, but I can
Plus
change
the-
it to 17. What was the number?
17,180.
I couldn't find it, but yes.
No, you're good. If that wording, I think sufficiently had the extra in it, then I think we should be okay. Yeah.
A motion to approve tree maintenance from Bartlett Tree Experts and Windbach Tree Services as presented for a total cost of $17,180, and to allow the DDA director to coordinate the services was made by Co. It was supported by Cloutier. Is there any further discussion?
Kevin, when do we need to do this again, as far as just the assessment? What is the cycle for going out and taking?
For like a full assessment of the trees, or just the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long are we good for, at least on the areas we've looked at?
What they gave us was the maintenance and management recommendation for all those trees, and I would assume if we continue to do what they recommended, which one of them is taking that higher look at them, the level 3 assessment, and some of them they just said, nope, it looks good. Also with a disclaimer at the bottom that something could always happen that's unforeseen, and they just do the best that they can for based off of the variables that are acting on the tree. But I don't have a good answer for you when we need to do that again. I would hope that we'd be able to act on this tree maintenance or this risk assessment for the next 5 years or so, continuing to do that, and then possibly do another assessment after that.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Moving on to item number 6C, beers at the bridge date discussion.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Knapp. So at the last meeting, we got a presentation of the annual report that I put together for the 2025 concert dates. You guys were very pleased with how it performed. We talked about some recommendations on revisions and adjustments, and I did tell you that the committee was going to be reviewing that and talking a little bit more in depth about that, which they did. But during that meeting, it was expressed that we would like to make sure that we do discuss the 2 versus 3 date again and get an official vote on that. Obviously, that board member is not present currently here, but we still do have a quorum to be able to kind of continue to give the guidance. But I just wanted to recap. The committee did discuss the two-date event structure. I told them that that was a guidance from you guys to discuss that. They said that the event continues to be highly valued and well-attended, even with the reduced number. The two-date structure still provides a strong, appropriate frequency of community engagement. 4th of July, falling right in the middle, occurring between the two dates, was very well-attended, is actually much well-attended, much better attended than we expected, given the Friday and the time frame. And provided a valuable community celebration and downtown activation. Park staff and BFG expressed that they were satisfied with the revised schedule, noting that not having a Music on the Lawn performance in the same week as Beers of the Bridge reduced scheduling conflicts for them, and the reduced number of Beers of the Bridge dates helped alleviate staffing and operational stress compared to some previous years. So, representatives from Discover Ada and Ada Business Association also shared that while the number was reduced, the Beers of the Bridge number was reduced, the sentiment of the event frequency and downtown disruption, which kind of continues to happen as we have more events, which is a great thing, is still kind of a factor, and they would still recommend and hope that we would maintain kind of the two-date structure. That was their kind of recommendation, or they advocated for that. So based on this, they would endorse maintaining the two-date structure. And so with that feedback, I gave you guys kind of the full list of community concerts for 2026, including Music on the Lawn, Beers of the Bridge, and 4th of July, which is the 250th this year, which we are investing a little bit higher in this year. And so the committee did recommend, we highlighted the two dates, June 12th and August 14th. That is the second second Friday of those months, as opposed to the third. August fell on a date which, talking with our partners, we do have a large wedding at the hotel, and that's part of the way we're coordinating, is we're making some adjustments where we can. So we thought that was an effective way to just kind of slide a little bit, given we haven't put too much into it yet. And June 12th, the third Friday falls on Juneteenth, and that one, so we just shifted to the June 12th date. So based off of those factors, committee is recommending that you guys vote to maintain the two-date structure currently for Beers of the Bridge.
Kevin, how are we on logistics and, past discussions on the area being used
Mhm.
with, tenants and all of that? Are we in a good spot there?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, following the event, if you guys remember when we switched to the two-date, it was still a request by some of our partners to be able to talk about the barriers and things like that. But since that time, speaking with our rep from Discover Ada, they understand that having received that feedback from the community, actually specifically that they said they prefer the current structure rather than a open social district type event where we said there would be no beer tent. Having gotten that feedback, I think they understood that. And there wasn't any major pushback to maintaining the kind of the current setup and logistics, which good point, with the pedestrian bridge getting towards the finishing stages in June, it's going to provide another little logistical revision right there, but we're still prepared to do it. Yeah.
Good.
Kevin, do we have rain date options for the Beers at the Bridge? And if not, what happens as far as like the payment to the band and things like that?
The contract in the band's, or the terms in the band's contract kind of specify that the day of, up until noon, I believe it's still that they would not receive any payment. From noon on, it's a quarter of the payment, I believe. And then at any time after the prescribed show time would be still paid in full.
And then what about any tents and other costs that we anticipate? How do we handle them?
I'd have to double check on that because Mike Mellema from Cascade Rental, who's had the coordination for the services the past couple of years. I think that's in terms of the timeline for when we would still require some payment there. I believe that's tied to the setup, which is usually at 8 a.m. When they're setting up, and considering that it really doesn't matter to them much that the event happened or didn't happen, it's still their supplies and everything out there. So I can't answer that question completely right now, unfortunately.
Okay.
Did you say the bridge would be done before the June one?
Hopefully. The last update that we got was they said July 14, they hope to be done, but well, July 14th, or they're saying, or they're hoping for completion, and if things go well, it will be earlier. They did or I believe they did the test last week, Julius, that we were out there when they were going to do the test and that didn't do it, to test the weight, 400,000 pounds on either side. The engineering was insane to listen to. It also sounded like Mandarin to me, but it was really cool that they were going to be putting that much pressure on both sides, all the way up to 900,000. I think at one point is what the engineer said. I want this, he wants that. So it was really cool to listen to, but they said July 14. They said is a hopeful completion date. If things go well, it could be earlier. So I guess you could probably say it maybe won't be done by then, and if there are some delays, then we're probably not looking at it in June. But I would almost guarantee. Wow, I shouldn't say guarantee. I would almost say that you would be able to see a very extensive structure at that point in June, including the boardwalks on the other side coming through and the actual physical shape of it.
I'll make a motion to maintain the two-date structure for Beers at the Bridge for 2026 and to approve the requested event dates of June 12th and August 14th.
I'll second.
A motion to maintain the two-date structure for Beers at the Bridge for 2026 and to approve the requested event dates of June 12th, 2026 and August 14th of 2026 was made by Harrison. It was supported by Frost. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Passed. Moving on to item number 6D, Farmers Market Committee revision update from Farmers Market Manager Sarah Stewaz.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for making it. She had a similar situation this morning as I did, where the plow got to the end of our driveway, so I appreciate you making it in for this. But, Sarah will present on this, and then I'll back up with any information.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So in October of 2024, the DDA approved a formal charge for our vendor committee meeting, or vendor committee and meetings. The current governance structure is me facilitating meetings as a farmer's market manager, Kevin overseeing, and obviously you as the governing body. There's not a whole lot of changes necessary, as you can see in the formal charge. When the committee was formed, we adopted the structure from a market that didn't have a market manager. They're completely run by their vendor committee. So they needed a chair to make final decisions, and in our case, it's obsolete. So we just wanted to clean that up, as well as language in regards to naming positions instead of specific people as well. Kevin, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I don't think so.
We need to make a motion.
So we do have a motion.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the revised charge for the Ada Farmers Market Committee incorporating structure changes.
A motion to approve the revised charge for the Ada Farmers Market Committee incorporating structure changes was made by Coe. It was supported by Vogel. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming this way for that.
Hey, that's the hardest part of my day.
Item number 6E, Capital Improvement Plan, an update from Director Austin.
All right, guys, so it is budget season, and we're still on the kind of a current path that we followed a little bit last year, in that we do have a joint meeting in February. Julius, have you set that joint, not the joint meeting with us, but the larger meeting for CIP for the township board?
Yeah, so what we've typically done is we normally do a budget work session that handles both the budget discussion as well as the capital improvement plan. Last year, after the completion of the township board had asked moving forward if we could hold those meetings separate, so we're gonna have a separate capital improvement plan work session and then a separate budget work session. The capital improvement plan work session will be next Tuesday from 3 to 5 p.m. and it'll focus on a 10-year CIP, not a 6-year CIP. And the idea is some of our millages go out more than 5 years, more than 10 years. And so trying to understand that we're not getting caught flat-footed when we have large capital expenses. So we will be looking at a 10-year CIP. So we'll be working with each of the different boards and funds for capital and looking at capital first before we move forward with kind of the budget conversation.
Thank you. So looking at our, I wanted to kind of review some of the things that fell into our 26-27 capital improvement plan that I'm kind of currently recommending. Some of this came off of stuff that was in our previous one, which did reach out to 2031 a year ago now, reached out to 2032. So I did provide you guys with a brief table there. That does get translated into an actual CIP form, which kind of gives a little bit more detail, but a couple of revisions that I made. There was a lot of stuff that actually fell into 26-27 when I made the first draft of that, and I kind of had to do a realistic assessment of kind of our capacity, whether it's myself, DDA, or just kind of what we can do with our funds and our meeting schedule and timeline. So I did revise that a little bit in the table that you guys see reaching out to 32, but specifically for 26-27, given some of the backgrounds on the capital improvement projects that I am recommending, the streetscape installation, that is just kind of, that was in there as a part of the $70,000 that we put in for the benches and the trash cans in the installation. And so there, because we weren't able to get the benches installed before the freeze, I still made sure that that was annotated, that there's a remaining fund balance, or not fund balance, but there's a remaining expenditure there for the installation, which shouldn't be more than that. It's actually right around $10,000 for that installation. So that's still in there, and we are still planning on doing that as soon as the weather allows. And also, it's in my report, but the recycling cans, the signs are ready to go, and I'll be putting out some public education on that, but I'll get to that in my report. The irrigation repair on Ada Drive, a biggie. This is one that I kind of highlight in the capital improvement plan. This was annotated a couple years ago. There was a value in there that when I looked at the estimates that were provided by Moore and Brugink, it really wasn't even close. It was probably about $75,000 to $100,000 off of what the estimate said. So it was like 120, I think last year, 120,000. The estimate said just over $200,000 for that. And since that time, obviously things have increased, but also the scope of the project has increased. So Bartlett, after talking with Bartlett, like I said, hey, can you come out here and let's talk about trees? And they said, of course. And we went over to Ada Drive and talked about that. That was probably about 4 months ago where I decided to include replacing the calorie pear trees right there as the scope of work. If you guys remember, I talked about calorie pears are actually getting put into a category by Eagle and USDA, or they're voting on it to be recommended not to be used anymore because they are an invasive. But they are at kind of the end of their life cycle, which is typically about 25 years. And the minimum construction work that we are proposing, which is to repair the irrigation line there and make sure it's functional, and the planter boxes, repair those, would likely kill the tree because the first 2 feet are where 80% of the root is. So if you disturb that with a bore, then you could see in about less than 5 years, you'd probably see the death of that tree. So they were very surprised to see that there wasn't any additional shearing happening by the way they're already on some of those. But so that got included in that scope. So the most recent estimate, which was early last week for that work, which included repairing the irrigation, replacing those trees, replacing the current trees with tree grates. So what you guys see in many places where it's a completely level with the grade so that there's more walkable space. I've talked to a couple business owners about that already. That was very well received, being that there is limited traversable space in the historic side here already. And then obviously redoing some of the planter boxes that are chipped, falling apart. The planter boxes would be around just the 8 street lights that are on that stretch now, instead of being around every tree. little bit of a trade-off, but walkable space in a fairly vibrant area is kind of at a premium. So we included that in the scope and making sure that they could repair that, leveling those out, salvaging and replacing the pavers as opposed to completely redoing with like some decorative stamped concrete or something like that. That definitely adds cost there. So that in total with contingency gets to about $400,000. I did ask them to do a cost estimate on snow melt. So snow melt being in the A and B block over there, further down in the downtown, and snow melt requires a couple of things. One, it's the cost goes up to about $960,000. Also, you do need about 100 square feet of space in the area to hook a boiler to run the actual function of the snow melt to that stretch. We are not always going to be here, hopefully, and so even that is kind of a little bit distant to kind of run to, but I would get more detail on that. So we would have to require a property owner to give us the 100 square feet, obviously through a legal agreement for maintaining that. So I do have that estimate to have that discussion, and I'm scheduling a discussion with all the property owners and business owners so that we can move along here. It was not my intention to proceed with that, given that we do not have the funds for that, and we do have the funds for the $400,000 repair. But I kind of annotated that in that irrigation or in the Ada Drive irrigation repair that I was going to kind of proceed that direction, being that it was kind of highlighted for the past 3 years as a needed repair. But if for some reason we would like to pursue that, we think that that's a cost that or a benefit that would serve us in the long run. That is something that I can look into. Obviously, long-term financing options for that, I'd have to talk through a little bit more with Julius and kind of what's open to us. But as of right now, that full scope of work is replacing those trees, redoing the planter boxes, leveling out all those pavers, and replacing that irrigation system all the way through Ada Drive from Bronson to Thornapple River. So, any comments on that one? I know it's a lot, guys, but.
So from the township board perspective, maybe it's Julia's question, where's the township board stand on, I'm sure it's come up on snow melt, in the village. Is there interest, appetite, pros, cons?
The township board's never discussed it. I think it's more of a question for the DDA, just due to the high cost. We had looked at it when I first got here years ago and looked at it for the capital improvement plan and decided the cost was just prohibitive. And there's
township perspective?
No, from the DDA. From the DDA when we talked about it. But townships, wouldn't participate in funding. This would be something that would be DDA funded. Realistically, if the DDA wanted to do it, there is options to borrow or finance the funds. But then again, it gets back to potential location for.
May I ask why the township wouldn't be interested in, participating in snow melt with the DDA?
Because it's primarily a DDA item. The DDA exists for the improvements in the downtown, and so the DDA captures those tax funds from the general fund, so the township doesn't receive those general fund increases. So all the development that has happened in the last 10 years, the township doesn't receive funding from that. That goes directly to DDA, and the DDA also has a dedicated millage. So a township township hasn't been interested in participating, and this is not just DDA specific, this is to parks, to fire. The township looks very specifically at their separate dedicated millages. So the fire department has a public safety millage, so the township doesn't dedicate any general fund to that. Same thing with parks, same thing with trails. From my understanding, many, many years ago when the township had one of their first trail millages, they had run out of funding. I think it was post '08, and the township had considered transferring general funds to a part of a project so that they can construct a new trail. Residents in Ada Township were very upset and frustrated and pushed back and said, we approved a millage. This is how much we gave you for trails. That is how much you have for trails. And so the township has very specifically taken that into account and not looked at it in any of the time I've been here.
Yeah. So you're saying there's not money there, so.
No, as the township looks at potentially building a new township hall, and even if it wasn't, the township has had a pretty strict, informal policy of not transferring funds. And I know there's other communities that do, but the township has kind of said, if voters want these things, we're gonna ask for that approval. And if they want a lower level of service for that, for parks or for trails, then that's okay.
When it comes to maintenance, snow maintenance, so salt, snow removal, how is all that handled right now with Ada Drive? Who does that?
So that, for the road,
No,
for sidewalk is DDA. DDA
So
funded.
So we all
Yep.
take care of all the salt sidewalk, yeah, and
Yep.
that's covered through parks or
Yep.
or through the ground?
It's covered through DDA.
Larger contract with Van Bossen, and then.
Oh, it's all third party.
We GL, or we code the specific line item services as they go to our places. Legacy Park is through Wesley, and then any of the DDA properties, and sidewalks are through DDA.
Yeah. And there is staff who's, shared across multiple funds. So you see Bill
Yep.
out there. There's a percentage of staff time that goes to DDA, parks, trails,
But
general
it
fund.
ultimately funded through the DDA?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I'll add, I brought this up a bit to Kevin when I saw this, is just the amount of work that is being done here. I think it's considerate, because a lot of this, if I understand, of that $400,000 is physically removing pavers, we're doing all that work to then replace. If there is a time to consider it, now seems like it would be a time, to consider, snow melt. And it's a large, I don't know how we pay for it, it's a large amount, but, I've heard a lot from property owners and property management companies, pros and cons, but from a, salt user experience, not having salt, not having the cost, to maintain those, there is some, small ROI, over the course of time for having that. And then the user experience, when you go to A Block, it is a much different retail experience in the winter, on those sidewalks, so something to.
Have we seen operational costs for a system?
Year over year?
Yeah.
I have not. That's something I could look into, if there was a, kind of a directive to make sure that we continue to hold, be aware of those variables. Because in my mind, my next step was obviously talking to business owners and hearing what that was, their interpretation over that. Ultimately it is, and then I would kind of transmit that to you guys. But operational costs year over year. Obviously, we have Right Build, which we can talk to a little bit about maintenance cycles and things like that. And then Jeff Genova from Holland, I've got a good relationship with him. He does not stop talking about the the snow melt. Yeah, you would think that was their number one accomplishment, but it is great. It's great over there, and they're very, very proud of it. So I do have the ability to kind of network with those people and make sure we have those, just as a way of making sure we are seeing those variables in case we wanted to dedicate, specific time to go that route. But
Was that snow melt in Holland? Some part of it was gifted. Was it the boiler? Was it, and then the DDA maintains it? How did that look? Can there be a private donor?
I would have to look into that. Yeah.
I remember it in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I know a little bit about the Holland system. So the main reason the Holland system is so cost effective is because it's tied to their steam facility or power facility that uses all that excess steam into the system. So the cost is relatively low, and it also allows them to do something with that as opposed to getting rid of it in different means. Specifically to the DDA, the DDA does maintain it, and they maintain it. There's less maintenance cost, but once it's in the ground, and this would be a question for Right Build, and I don't want to put them on on the spot, but if there's issues, what does that look like? Every single time you have to pull it up, if it's not working, and again, I don't know enough about the A block and B block, and is there downtime? I'm not sure. That's something obviously that if the board wanted could be investigated further. This is the first crack at kind of the capital improvement plan. And so you're going to get this version today, and then there'll be another version in February before it goes to the final, township board. And so these are all really good questions. But I wish we had a steam generation facility.
That would be nice.
Make this an easier conversation.
Data centers put off tremendous.
There it is. Get that on the record. Yeah.
Did you say that you were gonna get feedback from the business owners
Yes.
there?
Yep. I've reached out to them. I'm waiting for replies for coordinating a time. Ideally, one of them will, give us kind of their space, and I'll just kind of reach out and say, this is the time that we'll be talking about this, and I'll try to make sure I deconflict with schedules. I know they're busy people, as you know, and so I just want to make sure they have that opportunity. I had gotten a couple of responses already that they're very keen on talking about it. Specifically, I want to make sure that they know that I'm taking that into account for the scope of the project, not just, hey, when are you guys okay with me tearing out your, the front of your sidewalk, and when's that the least inconvenient for you? It's more like, hey, what does the scope sound like to you guys? It's something that has been expressed, through this project on the schedule in the past couple of years, and also through you guys. So I'm eager to have that conversation, but I want to make sure I had a bit of the direction first, and some of that was this estimate, and then also having snow melt, and kind of knowing what the numbers and what the requirements are on that. So if they said, absolutely, you got to do it. I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn, but sometimes things are, special assessments or things like that happen for funding things. And it's like, if everything's on the table, they have to understand what that, that would mean to fund that like that. So, but yeah, I just want to make sure that was on there before talking with them. Okay, looking at the next item. So right-of-way landscaping improvements, that was something that came up throughout the year. This year, we had a couple of different items, including village gateway signage was on there as well. That one, I just kind of bumped that back just a little bit from 26 to 27, just because, and it's obviously subject to what you guys would want as well. I just think there's a couple of different things that are happening right now, Township Hall, things like that. Village gateway signage with some of the areas that it's being requested, whether that's at the end of Headley or at the end, Headley in Fulton, or at the end of Ada Drive there. I just kind of felt like that might be one that probably wouldn't get addressed in, this year. And so there was a couple of other items that I thought were a little bit more attainable. So two areas in the right of way that we discussed, one being the bump out down there at the end of Thornapple, where it bumps out at Old Headley, right by Lindsay and Jeremy down there, and the Historical Society's nice kind of area right there, doing something a little bit more dynamic there. We do have plans to remove that fence and put some native plantings, some native grasses to screen the irrigation pipes that are coming out right there. If you guys thought that fence was there just for aesthetics, it's not, for obvious reasons. But so
there was a couple of evenings that I thought about just doing that myself and
Taking care of it.
making it disappear. But
yeah, I think the only compelling thing right now is in the wintertime, if you don't see the snow accumulation, maybe you'll see the fence, so that if you do hop the curb and smack the irrigation pipe, that it might be compelling to have that visual. But we think we can accomplish that with native grasses. They grow, 6 feet tall in some cases. So, but having this set aside to do something more dynamic. Supervisor Korth had mentioned it when we talked about the bench area, maybe a little bit of a, kind of a third space, a rest area type little plaza thing, maybe having lunch there or something like that. Obviously some restrictions based off of Kent County Road Commission, because the closer you get is in the right of way, but that, and then also both sides of the train bridge, there was actually a landscaping plan for just at the base of, if you're looking at up the train bridge on the left side where the sidewalk goes through, to kind of make that an even better experience on that sidewalk. And some of that planting, some of that landscaping required a little bit more installation, so retention things like that. Courtney Merrick from our Parks Department put together a really good plan for that, involving a lot of wildflower species, things like that. But I just wanted to make sure, and also you guys remember we'd had quite a few comments about the maintenance of that area. So I kind of put those in there just to see. I think that's something that could be accomplished. So any comments on those two areas that kind of considered in the right of way? That's kind of a pie in the sky number. Nothing too specific there, but.
I think that's great.
I think that's good. I know that train bridge has been a point of contention.
Okay. Okay, and the last one there, pedestrian infrastructure improvements, one I'm very excited about. I'm currently working, I'll talk about this in my report, currently working on the ordinance that the township would actually have to adopt to be able to put different type of implements at our crossings to make sure that traffic would have to stop for pedestrians. You guys remember me kind of sharing that with you a couple months ago from Kent County Road Commission. We're hoping to get a draft of that back from legal as soon as possible, so that we can revise based off of our needs, and really would like to have an ordinance, a binding ordinance that's in play by the spring, so that we could do some of the things we want to do. This 23,000, I imagine, would likely go towards harder infrastructure improvements, whether that's curb changes and things like that, but potentially towards the acquisition of supply, like the lollipop signs that you see, the epoxy ones, that will likely need to be replaced many times if learning is occurring. So that, that could be going to some of that, but I just want to make sure we do have the ability to say, yep, we got some funds towards something a little bit more dynamic, whether that's pedestrian islands or neck downs, maybe some bumps or things like that, or just supply for signage and things like that. So. Okay. One thing like I said, this is a draft, so one thing I did want to talk about briefly is that I talked with Kristen Wilds from the Historical Society about some of the public art that has happened, that has done with the train bridge and all that. She mentioned that the tunnel had always been highlighted as a very good, obviously a very good spot for a mural. That's something I remembered after I kind of put this draft together. That's a revision you guys might see on there, just because it's been a little while since the train bridge. Obviously, the Arts Council is growing in terms of their operational capacity. They've got a couple of events in 26, and they want to be back on Bronson in 27, actually. So, but that might be something that you might see a revision in, just to stay up to date, because it's a really good potential. I know there was a lot of discussion last time about a Native American type mural, and in that area on the tunnel. So, but the other item with capital improvement, which could make it onto this one or could be something in the future, I wanted to talk about, is that we were talking with with management about in planning about the township hall, and about the fact that the DDA does have the $800,000 parking fund, and we were looking at CIP and talking about the possibility, and we wanted to discuss with you guys about the possibility of kind of earmarking that $800,000 in CIP towards the parking lot of the township hall. So the current parking lot of the township hall is the community church parking lot, which we currently lease. And following the construction of the township hall, correct me if I'm wrong, Julius, I don't want to say something stupid here. Would we have complete control over the parking lot after that, or?
No, it would be part of the lease.
It'd still be part of the lease?
Yeah, it would be part of the lease.
Okay. So, but the current renderings that we have for that area is the fact that we could be seeing anywhere from 25 to 45 additional spaces to what's currently there. This was something that I talked about with Manager Suchi about talking about the $800,000 like that. The actual reconstruction of that parking lot, reorienting spaces, painting, surfacing, all that stuff would likely require all of that as a property in the DDA, and the DDA benefiting directly from increasing some of the parking in logical locations, kind of like we have with Covered Bridge Park coming online with those spaces and the spot. We know that the land values are very high in the DDA, and that there's been a couple of times where we discussed price per lot when it came to demoing the house next to us, or acquiring additional homes for a net gain in spaces. A lot of that is some pretty rough numbers in terms of what we would eventually be telling people in terms of price per space. Some of them were getting $70,000 per space based off of acquiring the land, demoing the house, resurfacing, and all that for a kind of a marginal net gain. So this does accomplish some of the things that we are wanting to accomplish in terms of a pretty significant net gain in parking in connection to obviously a larger project being the township hall. If you think about it, we are naturally our vehicle count, which is at any point 7, 8 in this spot, or more, maybe close to 10 would be over there now, so it'd free up some over here, different things like that. But we just wanted to kind of get your guys' feedback on that before we continue making drafts. So this would be something that would be included possibly in 27, 28 capital improvement, but that it was something that we wanted to get you guys' feedback on the utilization of those funds like that.
Kevin, there's X amount of parking spots that come along with that building, right? That would, so what you're talking about is in addition to,
Yes, so the 25 to 45 is what the additional would be put in there to what is out there right now. So,
Okay.
yeah, so you'd see the spot that we lease with the community church, you would see us probably straighten out some of the turns and things like that to add 90-degree spaces, get kind of creative on where they can go, building lines, things like that, to add parking adjacent to the building and gain 25 to 45 of what's currently out there now. So, in potentially 5 years' time from Covered Bridge to Township Hall, Covered Bridge Park, to Township Hall, that's anywhere from, could be 70 some spaces that we've gained in that time frame through 2 different projects. But yes, the 25 to 45 is an additional to what's out there.
what's this property slated for after you guys move?
They haven't had that discussion yet. I think I've heard Julie's kind of mentioned that Township Board wants to be a little bit further along with at least the design and everything for the Township Hall, the new Township Hall, before kind of having that discussion for sale, for restriction on obviously the chapel and things like that, for holding on to it, recouping some of the value through the sale, or kind of repurposing it. So they haven't had that yet, but they want to kind of have the financing and the design kind of done for the new hall before they kind of have that conversation. At least that's what I've been told. Yeah.
Of all the ideas we've had over the years for the parking fund, this would be one of the best one I think we've come up with so far. I'd be a fan of 45 over 25. But I think this
Most bang for the buck. Is it for the lease? Is that allowable for the lease? Do we have to ask? And then you remind us on the term of that lease, right? I mean, and then I guess
Yeah.
adding on that because ultimately it'd be great if the township owned that parking, because it's
Yeah.
not all the but where. the
Yeah,
public
so I mean,
aspect and then,
the Township Hall space, physical space the Township Hall would be on, there'd be limited parking on that. Of the 25 to 45, there might be 10 spaces on it depending on the layouts. And so part of the next steps, and we're, scheduling time to meet with the community church and talk through what that layout looks like. We kind of have an idea on our building footprint now that we have a concept design from Notre Dame. They're still finishing up their final report. Once that's public, we're, going to have public meetings, share it with all of our boards, and have Notre Dame come and give presentations, kind of talk about it. But right now, the township, that's the Township General Fund, not the DDA, leases the parking at Community Church. And so it doesn't necessarily talk about specific spaces. It talks about just that we release the area. So if the area is inside, it doesn't change necessarily the lease. But those are all details that we'd have to work out. Right now, the township is on the hook for the maintenance of the community church parking lot, as well as snow removal. And so we have, I think, a 30-year lease on that. So there might be 24 years left on that. And the township pays about $30,000, and then that goes up every year. So it might be $31,000 this year.
Yeah, it's the lease amount is a good deal for all. I just think if we're making the Township Hall investment, making investment in parking, we look at, preferably either owning or life lease or some.
Yeah, I mean, our
mechanism.
preference would be to own
Boxes.
any of the parking. I mean, one of the nice things with our lease for the community church parking lot is it does give us the option on the parcel, and so that is really important for any future, sale. But I know Director Austin talked about, the DDA had looked previously at other sites, and there's a home right next door that's up for sale for $800,000. So I mean, we've looked at the township or the DDA. Hey, let's buy a parcel and let's put in parking. You might be able to get 16 parking spaces there, and it's going to be probably $3 million.
This is the biggest bang for the buck for sure.
Yeah, and so we've kind of had this in the back pocket. We've talked about it a little bit, but also we weren't necessarily sure which location we were going to pick. And I know Director Austin talked about what the township, with this current site. I mean, I think realistically, the intent would be it's a board of 7. There's a lot of different intents of what someone would like to see done with the property. What I would say is I think as we get further down the conversation of the cost and how we're funding the new Township Hall, that becomes a bigger conversation. Because it's easy to say we want to to save something, but when there might be significant value in it and the cost of the new building, it's a math equation. And so realistically, that's a discussion and decision the board makes, not staff. We also own the house next door at 7351 Bronson. The board is much more open to having a conversation about selling that back to the private market, so for use. But there's been discussions on this side of whether you do an RFP for a developer and you retain the public parking, require the church to be maintained, and then they can tear down the offices and all that stuff, and say we're gonna sell the property for X because we know there's restrictions and we know there's constraints, but let's review the proposals and determine how to proceed. And so there's a couple different options. Once we get there, obviously we'll continue to have conversation with the DDA about that as well.
Is Kevin in the room when these conversations happen?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so, and I will say that a lot of these conversations haven't happened yet. I mean, it's been very, very, we had a work session regarding the budget, regarding the Township Hall and potential funding. And so that was one of the questions I asked is, I need direction on what to do with this property and the property next door, because that changes the equation of how we do things. And as we look at funding for not only the Township Hall, but as Parks looks at potential Parks millage, we just want to make sure we're looking at not only the Township Hall needs, but also park needs, the BFG, Buildings, Facilities, Grounds needs, which right now are essentially operating at a 3-stall garage, and do a lot of maintenance throughout the township. So there is other needs than just the Township Hall.
The model you described for this property, restricting it and going to the private sector, I'm encouraged by that. I think it has some potential.
Sounds good. And we'll keep you guys posted as we go through that process.
Thank you.
We still need to hear from Fishback too, right?
Yes, yep, and I'll talk about that in the parking plan.
Kevin, one last question,
Yeah.
it's more financial. So when I'm thinking about our equity of sorts, right, you mentioned $800,000 assigned in the parking fund, and then later in the budget, $520,000 in the unassigned fund balance. Is essentially our equity, or is it the combination of those two? So we have 800 in parking and then 520 in unassigned, or what?
As far as I know,
cash?
the 800,000 is separate from the $500,000
Yeah,
fund
okay,
balance.
so we have 800.
Yeah, there's a.
We don't often see the balance sheet of sorts
Yes.
here, and
So
so.
we'll have a budget forecast that we'll provide for the next budget presentation, which will include the unassigned fund balance. It'll include the parking fund of 800,000 and 100,000 that is also in reserve for Beers of the Bridge. And so the DDA has always had these kind of on their budget forecast.
Yep.
And so those all together equal the total fund balance, but they are restricted, only restricted by this group.
Yep.
I mean, there's nothing that says the DDA could say, hey, we think this, 100,000 for Beers of the Bridge is excessive. We want it to be 90,000. We can use 10,000 of it to invest in, something for the event.
I think that'd be helpful as we look at approving the budget to see where that's at.
Yep.
But I see we have, so the 800 currently set aside for parking plus the 520, which would help meet, if we did do or all of the irrigation per se, then that would help fill the gap for next year's budget.
Yeah.
And the other, now I'm getting financial, but the other interesting, maybe to start looking at is we're looking at a 5-year plan here for our CIP or whatever, 5 year, is what do we anticipate, because there's added development, like Julius, you said, so as we start thinking about longer term investments for snowmelt or things like that, what do we anticipate our revenues are going to be from the tax base increases, because we're anticipating our costs, but what, do we have money, if we were to make an investment like that, do we anticipate in 5 years we'd have it paid off?
Yeah,
or
I think,
2 years we have it paid off?
I think the second draft last year, I'm just building off of last year because that was the first time with the budget. Second draft in February was when we provided you guys with kind of the budget forecast for some of the estimated.
Yeah, which shows like 10 years out.
Yeah, just to see, because property values continue to go up, tax base is going up, we continue to have more development,
I mean, we're relatively conservative when we look at our forecasting. So, I mean, and we do this with the board every year. I mean, when you look out 10 years, we factor revenue growth at about 1.5%, which we think is a conservative number, and we factor expenditures at an increase of about 3%. then essentially in 7-8 years, you're underwater. But we do that intentionally because we're trying to be conservative with our revenues. We'd rather be conservative than overestimate. And so, and again, one of those things is, we do believe we're kind of at the top of that hill, that roller coaster of development for the downtown, because realistically, we're not necessarily getting another A block, another B block. I mean, Holland Home is obviously on that level, but I don't anticipate seeing 10 years of continued growth at the rate we've had. And I know planning director said, and I were just discussing, I mean, building permits as a whole have gone down, and that's not uncommon. That's similar in Cascade and some other communities, just because we were so high 2 years ago. I think we were around 430 permits, and I think last year we were around 340. And so we kind of track that year over year, but we are running out of space, and the rest of it now is kind of infill development. So, but yeah, for the second budget presentation, we'll have the draft forecast, we'll have all the wages, everything put in. We're still finishing up employee reviews, all of that, as well as allocations. So we do allocations across many employees to the DDA, to parks, to trails, to general fund, utility funds. And then we evaluate those on a year-to-year basis, determine, do we have bigger projects going on that require us to shift those percentages? And then we also try to validate some of them. I know Clerk DeMarco has done a really good job with BFG staff. And I know Director Austin has information as well of, how much time are we actually spending doing some of the things we're doing? I mean, so, BFG staff is doing garland on the downtown streetlights, or doing different things, so that we're not just throwing a percentage at it, but we're actually validating that number. And the DDA can feel confident in the fact that, okay, we're paying X amount of this person's salary. It's not just we're utilizing the DDA to fund other components.
Thank you.
Don, I know you mentioned you had a time constraint,
I can
so.
stay now.
Okay, all right, sounds good. I was just gonna say, if you did have to leave, please no one else leave, just because that'd drop us below quorum, so. But thank you.
Yes.
Legal action.
Yeah. And to your comment, Brian, if you guys know where my office is located, whether they like it or not, I'm usually in the room. If they're if they're in the Rick's room, but yeah. So based off of that feedback for the parking fund discussion, obviously, if any of you guys wanted to talk about this offline with me, please contact me. This is just something that we obviously 27, 28 is potential construction, and when those funds would actually be dedicated. We're hoping to do a lot of work here in 26. Originally it was break ground in 26, but things obviously continue to shift. But so I will include that based off of your guys' feedback that you think that is a valuable allocation of the $800,000 for the parking fund and a good net gain. But if you have any other discussion items, obviously until the time that's spent, obviously Manager Succi will kind of operate based off of hearing that from you guys. But I don't have any requested action on this.
Only thing I'd raise is if this is potential parking next door, future parking, have we done a back of envelopes? What would the tear down, I assume it's a tear down in a parking lot if we were looking at.
I think the one next door is when the original time that I heard a figure of, $70,000 per space, something like that. And we currently own it. I think the intention was selling back to the private market for whatever, residential potential or something like that, similar to what we're seeing on in other areas down Bronson and things like that. So.
One other question maybe can come under board member comment, but I'll just throw it out because you're both, speaking of tear downs, has the township board had any discussions around, tearing down 2 houses, building 1? I've seen it in a couple locations, and it, certainly is currently by right, but it changes the kind of the character of the
John, do you maybe want to address that?
For which location?
You talk about the people tearing
Just
down 2
in
units,
general,
replacing
the idea
one.
of buying 2 homes, tearing them down, and building 1 on the 2 lots. So you have going from tiny homes with character, tiny by, I guess.
Right.
The after. What is the
So,
philosophy of the?
well, the township has put in place some restrictions on zoning lot size for this particular area. We have moved to keep lot sizes smaller, narrower. As
Minimums, you now have maximums.
we have minimums and maximums now. And that certainly helps, but ultimately, developers, builders, the private market, buyers they may be able, even within those constructs, you may still have a home that some people don't like. It's all a matter of taste. But in any event, some restrictions have been put in place as it relates to the zoning ordinance for this particular area with regards to lot sizes, lot widths, and we're actually looking to reinforce that. And I don't know that we'll change the number significantly, Brian, but we will look to at least reinforce that as part of our zoning ordinance rewrite that is underway right now.
Okay, thank you.
Just as one item to add to it, because I've been a vocal person in some of the zoning meetings. The board, a couple years back, changed the requirements for some of the housing based on feedback we had received from residents regarding some of the large homes being built in the PVM district. And so we've talked a lot about it, the three of us, and sometimes it's not necessarily just about lot coverage, but it's about the step back, the height, if it's gonna come to the curb, what does that offset look like 10 feet up in the air, 20 feet up in the air? There's homes on Bronson that have been built that are just, quite frankly, too large for the downtown character. And I've been pretty vocal about that in some of our zoning meetings. Whether the township board makes a change to that, I don't know what that will look like. I do think there's a definite concern regarding all of the lots in downtown just being torn down and turned into 2-for-1, like you're saying. Our other concern is the 1-for-1, where the one turns into just a giant 3-story home that doesn't look like it fits. And so we have had some developments, on this side of Bronson towards Covered Bridge Park, that those homes seem to fit on a little bit better on the scale size, but they're all still in the same zoning requirements. And so there's nothing to say that those property owners couldn't have done something different than what's going on in other parts of the PVM district. But I know many people share the concerns that you've brought up.
And to be clear, there's a place for very large homes in Ada, right? I mean, almost everywhere else, right? I mean, so that's fine. Okay,
Yeah, to speak to your point, Brian, I think it's something that I've encouraged when going through the zoning ordinance rewrite, just to make sure that if we can, and I think we do a decent job and we'll do a better job, that if density that is appropriate like that, or a little bit higher density, or units, multiple units, things like that, was available, that people were able to do that in the appropriate location, like the PVM district down here. That's something that I think is vital towards the long-term health of the DDA, all of our businesses. I have strong opinions about that. So I'd like to encourage that wherever possible. They're currently doing the zoning ordinance surveys is out there and active right now. I believe it's still active. And then also the rewrite to make sure that the PVM does kind of allow that kind of flexibility and maybe encourage it.
One more, sort of the opposite side of that, I've seen in other communities, and it's happened here in Ada a little bit too, where they take an existing residential and convert it to a commercial, and it has that character. I think it gives it some extra character. So anything we can do to encourage conversion where it makes sense from a classic residential structure, then turn it into a commercial location might have some.
I think the current
appeal too.
the current trajectory on the zoning ordinance rewrite is that we're going to more kind of standardize the PVM for all of the allowable uses, so that the allowable uses aren't just tied to a specific stretch of street or something like that, that it actually frees things up a little bit. And I don't want to speak out of turn. So, some of that standardization is kind of expanding what the PVM, the flexibility of the PVM in general for all property owners. So.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. I'm all set.
All right. Moving on to item number 6F, a budget discussion for the fiscal year 2026-2027 from Director Austin.
Okay, guys, I'll keep a good pace here. I appreciate it. I know we're running long and we still got some other items. So this is kind of what we went through last year with this cycle, making estimates off of what we took in, what we foresee Also, it's the first draft, so like Julia said, once they get wage calculations, insurance, things like that, that'll play a factor. So I do expect these numbers to change, but I've just kind of presented what I'm proceeding with now with the understanding of what we spent this year based off of different expenditures that came up that were completely valid, that we need to adjust for. And so if I'm rolling through that, I tried to get the most valid or the most updated TIF revenue numbers for you guys in 25. Some of that is still coming in based off of tax payments that are due in February. And so I was working with Gina on that. You can see kind of the revenue side of things. So that is still subject to a couple of changes. And there's still some estimates on there. Like Julia said, we try to do conservative estimates on that. Wages, one thing to note, he said BFG we're still paying a portion of Bill Cook, who is working predominantly in the DDA. And then also there was discussion about a possible part-time communications position just because of everything that's going on and that has gone on in Ada Township. That we do know that our residents could be very well served by somebody completely dedicated to communications throughout the department. So to be able to assist in a part-time capacity. So I wanted to make sure we did kind of put something there because the DDA would definitely utilize that person. Wages, there's some intern stuff that hadn't changed. We actually used less this year than kind of expected. Contract services are in there, just a little bit of addition based off of some landscaping items that popped up. Landscaping and beautification, I just added some additional to that. We have that's our contract with RRR, who we're meeting with today about spring planting. And then some additional right-of-way stuff. Snow removal's in there, marketing, promotion, maintenance, repair, and allocation. So that was I used some of that for brick paver work and things like that, separate from obviously any irrigation project or anything like that. Improvements, right now I'm taking in the $400,000 of the irrigation project and adding some additional items in there. Improvements is kind of where you'll see the capital improvement items that we just mentioned for 26, 27. That's why you see that large number there. Community events, taking into account all of the, adding a little bit extra to pretty much all the ones that we dedicated towards with tinsel trees and trolleys as well. At the $10,000 mark, we got a really good value for that sponsorship. Farmers market contract services I included basically being able to budget for for the full year for Sarah. Her current contract is on until the end of the farmers market season in 26, but just want to make sure there was some flexibility there in case there was some more demand there. So you guys do see net revenues negative there. Just to kind of explain that, it is a capital improvement deficit. So the large capital improvement costs of over roughly $460,000, that's not an operational deficit. So we wouldn't be operating in our day-to-day operations wouldn't be in the deficit just because of that that kind of capital improvement stuff. And once again, I don't want to sound like I'm just putting my hand on the unassigned fund balance, but I talked to Julius about this capital improvements and some of the bigger ones being able to kind of tap into that $500,000 that we have to address some of this, especially because it's not operational deficit. So this is the first draft. I will have more for you guys in the next 2 months before it's approved, or you recommend approval in March to the Township Board. So do you guys have any takeaways for me? Any direction on the current stuff that's in front of you? Or any questions?
Item number 7, reports and communications. Number 7A, a revenue and expenditure report as of 12/31/2025.
Staying on topic, revenue and expenditure report, 12/31, ends in 12/31. I apologize, I think the agenda did say 11/31. That was a typo for mine, so this is 12/31/2025. I've got nothing to highlight. This is obviously, I'm working through a lot of this going into budgeting, and it's very relevant to how I'm constructing the budget drafts for you guys in the next 2 months. So.
Item number 7B, DDA Director Report.
Okay, guys, so I basically kind of discussed the Beers of the Bridge items already with those dates. I've reached out to a couple of acts already, and they've reserved some dates there. I've talked with the committee about those. They're giving me good direction on that. June 12th and the August 14th date. We are working on, I'll talk about the branding a little bit that is relevant to Beers of the Bridge. The committee did kind of give direction to do a refresh, and I'm happy about that for the Beers of the Bridge. I'm gonna call it an aesthetic font and some of the imagery that we've kind of utilized. I think the committee kind of believes 10 years was great for the kind of the current look, which I call Western chic, I guess you might call it. I don't know what it was, but so we're looking to do a refresh on that, including that in the scope of services for our banner work. So trying to find somebody that's willing to kind of take that on. I'm hoping that doesn't expand the scope of work there and kind of makes it a little bit more exhaustive, but we thought it'd be a good time to do that. So we're going to be engaging in that. Sarah will have a farmer's market update for you. Winter Wonderland bridge lighting. We've gotten plenty of good winter aesthetic for the bridge over there. There has been multiple proposals that have happened at the bridge. They reached out and said, hey, can you make sure the lights are on? And said, yeah, sure. Before it was on a timer, we just left them on completely. And people have been very receptive towards that. Parks Department said they've gotten a lot of calls about that. I've got to double check it. I think interior was off today, so I'll just be checking on that. But the 31st is when that will end. They'll be taken down, so enjoy it while you can. Festival of Trees is done. It was a great addition to Legacy Park, but done just in time for them to start tearing it up over there for the pedestrian bridge. So if you guys see it, there's quite a mess over there, and we're trying to make sure they clean up as best they can at the end of the workday. But I'm always talking with Jennifer Bonnie over there, trying to make sure that we're deconflicting where we can, parking-wise too, for two of the projects that are happening, us and a build-out in there. So keep an eye on that. But I did put some budget allocation for possibly some additional or new light fixtures. The deer are a little worse for wear, as we kind of discussed, and I'm talking to staff about the process they go through reusing those. So. Streetscape fixtures, I will send you guys, I apologize, I didn't put a picture in here. Dennis has our recycling signs mounted to our new cans, and I'll be working on getting those out at the end of the month and getting some public education out, website and Facebook page. Republic Services offered us a really good contract, basically in line with what our current services was from them already. For a cardboard only is now switching to commingled. So it's going to be, the receptacles are still at the library, but we'll have 6 recycling cans going out in the highest trafficked areas based off of what the BFG staff had told me. And Dennis did a great job. I need to give him kudos for kind of talking with them. He's always bouncing stuff off of me, but he talked to GFL, Republic Services, Harrington's, I think, on some cost-effective options. Big thing is we wanted to get this out there, get this in front of people. During the summer, I've had multiple people ask me, where's our recycling? This was something you guys said you wanted to get done. So they'll be out at the end of the month, and I'll be putting out that education. The biggest thing is I did not want our staff sorting trash. I thought that was unreasonable for us to ask of them. So we talked with Republic about contamination fees and things like that, which they assured us they really don't have much. So I wanted to make sure that we were being cognizant of staff on that. So commingled trash or recycling, we got to get the people to make that decision to put it in the right receptacle. So the signs are very obvious. They're nice circular signs that we actually bent a little bit flush to the can. So I'll get you guys an example of that, but those will go out at the end of the month. Curb alteration is still on hold because of the weather, and Brian Carter, who you guys approved to do the work, is still keeping an eye on thaws and things like that. Last thing we'd want to do is rush that, especially with the gathering of utilities that are right under that spot. The Support Local campaign, maybe Ann has a new figure for me. I love this. I've been loving this part of the past couple of months. Last number you told me on January 8th was there's $15,000 in Love Your Local gift cards that had been purchased. Is that still correct, Ann?
Yeah, 15,325.
There we go. Nice
Awesome.
little frosting on top. Yeah. So we think that's kind of exceeded. We didn't really have a great a metric that we were trying to hit, but it was great to see that kind of roll in. I know there's still some businesses that hadn't activated or something like that. There's some, we know the portion of those funds she described that were actually utilized to date, but there's still a lot of money out there that's on those gift cards that could be, or will hopefully will be recycling through the DDA and just our ADA businesses that are a part of that. So great credit to Ann and Liz for all the work that they did to coordinate that with YIFT and your guys' approval of that to get them going on that and everything. So yeah. And then I just said that we're going to be obviously trying to strategize for continuing the campaign and continuing the awareness as we go through this spring season, the early spring season, and into summer. So Ada Drive irrigation, I kind of mentioned that already. Parking plan, February 11th or February 12th. I'd like to get some feedback from you guys on the late afternoon timeframes for those days to do a joint session, a joint presentation from Fishbeck on that. So they've got the results of their study and they'd like to present that, recommendations, conclusions, things like that. So is there anyone that you guys would like me to highlight more than others? I know it's between us and Township Board, Director said, obviously in attendance and everything. So if you guys would give me a little bit of guidance on there, or just give me the flexibility. So I'm thinking late afternoon, possibly evening, depending on what the Township Board would be able to do.
Well, my preference would be anytime on the 11th versus the 12th.
Okay. Anybody else have any preference for that?
Have stuff, but it can be moved, so either day works.
Okay.
The 11th.
11th. Okay. There was a couple of things on that, so I'll move towards that. But if we have the flexibility to have to go to the 12th, possibly. Obviously, not required to attend. Highly encouraged based off of the conclusions that we'll get. But we want as many people as possible for that. So I'll work towards the 11th. Supervisor Korth did approve or did appoint Zach Schaff to the DDA. Regrettably, he messaged me a couple weeks ago, said on Christmas Eve, and when he visited his brother in Colorado, and he's okay with me saying this, he had a medical emergency where his retina detached from his eye, and he had to fly back to Ann Arbor for a surgery. And so he is recovering. He can't really read very well through that eye, and there's some vision restrictions. So he didn't feel that he could be very well prepared for this first meeting. And I said, absolutely, that's fine. But he does plan on being here starting in February. If you guys don't know him, he lives just down on Thornapple across from the community church in the build that has the barn kind of attached to the house right there. Lived there for a little while. I think that was his parents' land. You could probably ask him about it, that he built on. He was very, very involved in a lot of things. That's why I made this recommendation. I know some of you had talked to him and felt very good about it. So he is appointed to the DDA board for the 4-year term. And then Teresa Junkic, Mike Garbati, and Julie Jandernoa are appointed to our Citizens Council. So they will meet with me on February for our first Citizens Council meeting. They all live in the district. Mike Garbati lives right next to that tree we're about to remove, so I'll let him know about that. And they're all very encouraged and very excited to be a part of it. So, pedestrian safety ordinance, I just mentioned, it is with our legal team right now. There was, when I talked to you guys last about it, the Grand Valley Metro Council was actually doing some work at the same time. We felt like they were not going as fast as we were hoping. They actually put out some pretty good guidance leading into the time that I reached out to our legal department about drafting some resolutions and ordinance adopting the uniform traffic code, which is what a lot of municipalities do, and then edit that to actually put teeth to the fact that our automobiles have to stop for pedestrians at marked crosswalks and different things like that. So we are in the process. We are really hoping to have something in front of the Township Board. I imagine no later than March to get that approved, to get an ordinance in place so that we can put up signage according to Kent County Road Commission when we have the ordinance in place to put up signage to reinforce that law, local law that we would have. So, and I just mentioned streetlight banners and Beers at the Bridge branding. We've kind of put those together, as well as Music on the Lawn was very interested in possibly seeing some connective tissue between those. I thought that was, I wasn't opposed to that, being that it is our community counselors. We end up on similar marketing stuff and things like that. So we would obviously carve those out in terms of expenses, but I've sent those to some providers to see if I can get a good RFP on those, so we can get cracking on that. And I know you guys said you were willing to serve on that committee, and that's just why I haven't gotten contact yet. So, and then just on a rough schedule, we can email about this too, so we're not taking up too much more time. We talked about when we approved our strategic plan last March. We met 3 times to review that. I know you guys operated with that strategic plan for 2 years before you updated it again in 25, so 22, 23, and then technically in 24. We talked about doing an annual review of those objectives, the line item ones, not necessarily the higher picture ones, some of our goals and things like that. So I'll reach out and just kind of throw some dates out there so we can kind of roll through those. I imagined we talked about annually reviewing those and adding things that we thought were necessary, but not fundamentally changing those actual goals that are kind of the higher level, but instead some of those line item things. So we don't have to talk about it now. I'll just kind of reach out. I figured it'd be good to we did the strategic plan review over 3 months, January, February, and March, and then operated on it in April. So I'll just kind of try to find a time. We have a lot of joint meetings coming up with, whether it's board or some of us, parking stuff with us. So maybe I'll kind of try to space that out, push it a little bit back into February or something like that. So a lot of upcoming events there, or just a list of upcoming events. Ribbon cutting on January 29th at Guest and Gather. That's just down closer to, I think, the old Artisan Fox location, so closer to the Ada Fresh Market. And then we have the events meeting on January 26th. That's ourselves, Discover Ada, and the ABA, kind of collaboratively working there. Parks Department will be there as well, talking about our events. I just put some of the Parks Department cool events happening. Daddy-Daughter Dance, Songs and Sips happening on February 28th. That's a cool songwriting introspective that they're going to have at Roselle. Yeah, I will pass the baton over to Sarah for a farmer's market update.
Hello again. So a lot of my report was obviously with the structural change. Mainly, besides that, the vendor committee meeting, which was supposed to be happening today, we did reschedule because of weather. But we will be discussing the same things, mainly vendor agreement updates. I spent 2 days last week at a Michigan Farmers Market conference, and there are a lot of updates we need for our vendor agreement. It was just very vague, so we'll be spending a lot of time on that. Getting feedback from them, just making sure we're all on the same page. Besides that, I've been spending time on the time change survey with patrons as well. I'm gonna give it a couple more weeks to get as much feedback as we can before we make a decision on that. Obviously, we don't wanna make a hasty decision and keep bouncing around with that, so we wanna make a lasting change. If we do it, that is. Besides that, lots of scheduling with vendors, reaching out for scheduling and making sure. Food truck vendors, we have a variety for next season instead of the same vendors over and over. So I want to make sure the market is not just obviously to shop, but an event to come to every week as well.
Is there still availability for more vendors?
Oh, yes.
Okay, then I have somebody I'm gonna connect you with.
Perfect. I would love that.
Good.
I'll take them all, send them all my way, so.
We're currently March release for the new packet for people.
Yes, correct. March is, that's when it's traditionally been sent out. Any earlier is a little too far out for vendors usually. They're in the same planning schedule as us, so.
Cool.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Item number 7D, Township Department Head Staff Reports.
Received and filed.
Thank you.
Item number 8, is there any board member comment? Item number 9, public comment. Item number 10, a motion to adjourn at 9:35 a.m.
Second.
A motion to adjourn at 9:35 a.m. was made by Harrison, supported by Frost. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Passed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Did we add the first one?
So we started doing public comment when the